Well, hello everybody. Hope you're all doing fantastically well. We are back with the debrief. Oscar, give us a thumbs up if you can hear, mate. Give us a thumbs up. Right, okay, you can unmute yourself as well now, mate. We're back here discussing. There we go. He's here. Yeah, how you doing, mate? It's been a long time. We've just been in the background trying to. You guys will see this overlay right now. This has taken about 4 hours to sort. So apologies to everybody who's been waiting. It's been a massive stress. So yeah, appreciate that, everybody. Please make sure you slap a like on the video as well. And we're back with a sort of Leeds United tactical transfer master plan. We've spoken to Gabe. I've done loads of bits on it, but it's absolutely essential that within this period we get one of our most intelligent brains in the Leeds United recruitment space, Mr. Oscar Marriott. And it's been a while, mate. How are you doing? Yeah, yeah, no, it definitely is, mate, 100%. And you're kind of looking at obviously Liverpool there. You obviously they're making moves with Jeremy Frimpong, and then obviously you're looking at Kirkez as well, and apparently Florian Wirtz is another one. This is all before the all before the season's finished. So yeah, we are off into a hotbed of talent, really. And I think that's, I guess, just before we get into, because what we're going to do, everyone, for this video is just have a little bit of a touch on free transfers and loan transfers, of which are going to be maybe a little bit more realistic for the club. Leeds have got to take into consideration, as Oscar's very aware, as I'm very aware of PSR restrictions of what we can and what we can't do. And Oscar, there's some names, and we won't get into them quite yet, but there's some names of which you kind of look at and you think there might be some opportunistic market moves there for Leeds United. But when you're kind of looking at this market overall, mate, and where Leeds United are at in terms of going forward and recruiting, just on an overall standpoint, mate, where would you be looking to improve? Where do you think it's essential that Leeds United improve? But also, realistically, what do you think these can do in this window? Oh, hold on. Hold on, mate. Hold on. You might have to. I can hear you, but you might have to connect through StreamYard. My God, this is absolutely terrible, mate. I don't think the chat. I don't think the chat can hear you. Can you just go through StreamYard, mate? Yeah, my bad, everybody. Just you won't be able to hear Oscar now, but yeah, we are gonna move on that. Apologies, it's just this whole new thing that we've been doing. So yeah, we're gonna have to just transfer a little bit. Stay with us. We're gonna move the overlays, and this is the absolute beauty, everybody, of live streaming. So we can hear you now, mate, but we can't see you. So hold on a sec. Let me just. And this is the beautiful stuff, everybody. We can hear you. We can hear you. We can't see you. Yeah, we can. I can. What can the chat see? Wait, but can you guys hear Oscar, or can you not hear me? How? You can't. Okay, they can't hear you. I can hear you. Have you exited? Have you? We need to get you out of here. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, we need to get out of that thing. Get out of that thing we were doing beforehand. Get out of the control room. Get out of there and get straight on StreamYard like we'd normally do, mate. Can hear you, Connor. Good stuff, guys. This is great. Nearly 500 of you in the building. Oh God. He's Oscar, can you hear me? Oh God. Right. Right, we're still okay. You guys can hear me. That's great. Hold on. Well, listen. Just hear him testing. Hold on a sec, guys. We're gonna have to make a. Oh, this is unbelievable. Scenes. Right, Oscar, follow this lad. Right. So just hear him saying testing. Hold on. Just hear him saying testing. Here he is. Right, hold on. Right, get out of there. Well, that was fun.
Hopefully, the audio's picking up on here now.
It is. Right, all good stuff. Can you hear and see now? Get that remote control working.
That's good. Right, okay, that's better.
All right, we're 6 minutes in, and you guys will have probably all switched off by now, so that was completely pointless. Right, that was absolutely
Best
terrible.
video of the season I've done this because no one can hear me.
Yeah, Bob has even sent a donation. We can't hear Oscar at all. So we'll start again, mate. So if you just want to say how you've been doing and what we need to be, what you're thinking of this season.
Well, before like 6 minutes ago, I was feeling great, mate. I was feeling really optimistic about our new season. But if this is like a omen for how the season's going to go, it's not so good. But mate, all good, all good. I just think the reality of the Premier League set it in. I think we've already mentioned about the Premier League champions who haven't even got the trophy yet are already building their left-hand side. They're potentially spending 160 million on a whole new left-hand side. So this is what we are up against. This is the Premier League champions alone. So you've got to think about what the teams that have had underwhelming seasons are going to do. You know, your West Hams, your Evertons. It's going to be extremely tough. And it's not going to be a case of money against money for us. It's about getting value for money for us, because at the end of the day, that's where we're going to have our unique selling point going into next season, is getting value for money. Like we have done in the previous windows under the 49ers, we're going to need something like that again, and probably even more again. But all in all, feeling good, mate. But the reality of how difficult next season is going to be has certainly set in.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I'll share the image. You might want to connect to the actual mics. I think you can still connect it to your laptop.
Oh my word.
Jeez.
Oh my word.
What an absolute show. But yeah, guys, make sure if you are watching on Twitter and Facebook, this quality content will continue. We will get it right. We have got something of which will, the overlays are looking really good. There's just a few things of which, I need to sort out technically. Okay, right, let's get into it. So this is something that me and Oscar wanted to talk about today anyway. We were speaking about it a little bit earlier when it comes to the fullbacks, the free agents, this, that, and the other. When it comes to the Athletic, they were speaking a little bit earlier on in terms of what Leeds can and obviously Leeds can't do. And we're kind of a little bit aware of it as well, aren't we, Oscar, in terms of the free agents, this, that, and the other. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, just off the cuff, is there any sort of oh my god. Do you know what, guys? Do you know what? This is just funny, isn't it? Should we just have a laugh? Like, I'm so sorry. I don't know where he's gone. You just got to laugh. You've just got to laugh. It is incredible. You've gone. Oscar's gone. Jesus Christ. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Right. Okay. Well, let me at least. I think he's tried to connect to his mic and he's gone. He's absolutely gone. Chuckle Brothers, shocking. Absolutely shocking. But we've got a few free agents, of which that we're going to speak about today. It's been released by The Athletic, everybody, and we're going to speak about them. And this was the plan of the planet. He's tickled me. I can't stop that. It's Oscar in a nutshell. That it's Oscar. Where's he gone? Where's he gone? But this is what we're going to speak about today anyway, everybody, when he eventually comes back. The out of contract players of this window. And do you know what? We were seeing a little bit earlier on from a few of yours, a few people as well, that they were looking forward to it. And here he is. He's back. You all right, mate?
I'm good. I think it has connected my mic, but I don't know what's going on.
Look, let's just leave it. It doesn't matter. We've got enough in the building. I think I've built a subscriber base, mate, and they know you and love you so much that they're just willing to stick around anyway. So the absolute show of tonight, we'll have to get through it. All right, mate. Well, looking at these Premier League players out of contract, everybody, I'm sure you can see it right now if you just enlarge your screen a little bit. There's a fair few names on there. Oscar, I think it's really important as well to talk about the loan signings, but are there any in particular there for you, mate, that stand out?
There's a few fullbacks who could potentially do a job for us. Whether they'd be starters, I'm not sure. I mean, Kyle Walker-Peters kind of stands out. I mean, he's obviously, I've not really seen enough of Southampton to judge, but I can't imagine he's had the most stellar of seasons. But again, I've actually been impressed whenever I've seen him play against us. Nelson Semedo maybe another potential option in terms of fullbacks. And then obviously looking at kind of like the experience side of things, I like to Craig Dawson have always been quite solid performers at this level. Johnny Evans on there being quite a solid performer at this level. It's just whether their legs can withstand, a full season of Premier League football is another question. But maybe potential options as kind of like fourth choice centre backs could be there. There's a couple, even maybe goal. Ideally, a goalkeeper would be sort of jumping out at me here, but there's not really. Looking through that list, there's not really any that are particularly jumping out at me who I think are massive improvements on what we've got. Kenny Tete, I think we both mentioned off air. I think he's been a solid performer at this level. But I think whoever you do sign from there, they can't be one of your main signings. There's just got to be signings that supplement, what we do, what else we do in the window, if that makes sense. They just have to be sort of icing on the cake kind of signings, really. They can't be our main signings. And I don't think they will be. I don't think there's anyone on there who's good enough to be the main signing. I mean, Pablo Sarabia could be a little option as well. But I think whoever you sign, in pretty much most cases, other than Trent Alexander-Arnold, everyone else on this list is on the list because they haven't been able to break into the first team this season, really, in general, or not deemed good enough for next season. So you've got to obviously bear that in mind as well. But there's some decent options on there.
Yeah. No, I think there are a few decent ones. Nothing. I mean,
there's no one who I described an 8 out of 10 on there.
No, and obviously we'll come back down to the list. I mean, there's a couple in there who we could talk about. And once again, I was saying a little bit earlier on, Oscar, that we don't want to get ourselves dragged into a conversation of which is we're bringing players in because they're Premier League proven sort of experience. They've been in the Premier League for long enough. I kind of want, and I think me and you have spoken about this actually in the Championship at the beginning of last season, you want profiles. You want profiles to fit the manager's system. You want managerial continuity. Now the 49ers have backed him. That was the whole conversation. Are they going to go with someone else? Are they going to stick with Daniel Farke? They've stuck with Daniel Farke now. The most successful teams that we've seen in recent years have stuck with the managers initially. We know it's based on circumstance, of course, but that's why, the ownership get the manager appointment right in the first place. They've normally realized that manager is a long-term option. So the 49ers, they've mentioned at the beginning of last season as well that this is not just a thing of which is going to be the Championship for Daniel Farke. They want it to be a long-term thing, and they believe he deserves an extra chance. So another chance, I should say. So they've given him that backing. So you've got to fit players, profiles who fit the Daniel Farke way. I'm not sure Jamie Vardy does. I mentioned this morning. I'm not sure Souček does when you kind of look at his attributes and how you fit in Daniel Farke's base side, of which we've not really seen him adapt before. I don't think really I saw him adapt for Norwich. I've spoken to a few Norwich fans as well. They're not 100% sure he adapted for the Premier League, which is an interesting conversation itself. But I think the fascinating conversation here is, Oscar, is it profile proven players or Premier League proven players? Where do you lie on it?
Profile proven players for me. I think obviously it'd be nice to have some Premier League experience in there as well. I think ideally that'd be the case, but we've got to remember Premier League players are overpriced. You can find some fantastic players at this level, no question about that. I think most of the players at this level are fantastic, but actually getting them for good value for money, much more difficult. There's very rare sort of occasions where you see that actually coming to fruition, where they do prove to be value for money. I mean, even if you go back to, like, say, for example, Nottingham Forest, when they first got promoted, Morgan Gibbs-White cost them 45 million, and that was in their first season back. And listen, Morgan Gibbs-White has been absolutely fantastic for Forest. I'm not doubting that for 1 minute, but
Oscar,
if you sign a player,
I'm not sure that was the first year, because I'm pretty sure they got Lingard on a free, didn't they? So I'm not sure that was the first season.
No, the Gibbs-White, he signed quite late on in the window from Wolves. He actually played against us on the first day, but he signed at the end of the August window from Wolves, and that's put 45 mil.
So, okay, interesting. So So I thought they were. I was of the impression that in their first season in the Premier League, they recruited Lingard for a free. So you're saying they brought in
Yeah, Lingard signed as well. I mean, it's when they went absolutely
right?
crazy and signed about 6 different number 10s.
Okay, okay,
Ironically, it was Gibbs White who actually made it work. But what the point initially was that even Lingard was on a free, but the wages he was on meant it was a crazy big investment that
yeah,
Forest had to put into him. And obviously, you've seen the likes of Callum Hudson-Odoi maybe prove better value for money. But again, whatever we do this summer, it's not going to be what's the right word for it? They're not going to be signings that are going to be as risk free as what we did with like an Ampadu or Joe Rodon because last season or the season before that we were by far the big fish in the small pond. This
yeah.
season, well, we're not the small fish by any means, but the pond is much bigger, and you're actually kind of trying to get proven signings. It's going to be very difficult for us. I just don't think it's going to be an option for us. I think it's more important we get the right profiles. I mean, if you want to go through some of the profiles I was thinking of, I think the striker one's the most important one. I think it is going to all be built around the centre forward because we saw with Norwich, Daniel Farquhar at Norwich, how important Timu Pukki was to the whole system. Even at Premier League level, Timu Pukki got 15 goals in his first season and got 12 in the second season. So, of course, the rest of the team was an absolute disaster, but Pukki did deliver in the team. But I still look at the current Leeds team and think we haven't really got a Pukki type profile. But I think ideally I'd want to go a level above Pukki and say someone that can hold the ball up as well and is a bit of a physical powerhouse. And this is one where I'd go a little bit more ambitious. And I think I would quite happily spend a lot of the budget on a striker. I seriously would. I think you've seen with Ipswich, yes, they've not stayed up, but how important the lap has been for him. And if Ipswich were to have any chance, it would have been because of Liam Delap. And you look at, say, for example, you look at your Leverkusen, for example, Patrick Schick is firmly established as their first choice striker, but Victor Boniface was linked with West Ham in January. Now, now West Ham have obviously gone down a different direction, and Ferguson came in instead. But you see little things like that, and you think, obviously it seems like a crazy ambitious one that to me, someone like a Boniface, but you have to remember back in 2020 when we signed Rodrigo Moreno, that was probably equally as ambitious at the time. Now, Rodrigo wasn't the right profile for us. That's an example where it can go wrong. We signed the wrong profile in Rodrigo, but Victor Boniface, I think, would fit us really well. Tierno Barry at Villarreal, I think, been pretty impressed with this season. Although I think it's been linked with higher up the league, Chelsea.
How ambitious do you get though? Because I mean, I came on and
we're talking very ambitious there in that particular signing.
Well, there's a few, Oscar. I'm not sure if you're aware of Omar Saleh in Serie A. I mentioned him at centre back, and obviously people were a little bit like Connor, we're not getting him, and obviously Inter were meeting up with his representatives. I think towards the back end of the season, as they're trying to identify 3 players. There's the young lad at the back as well for Bologna, who they're looking at, who looks pretty decent as well. Obviously, there's Dan Ndoye as well. There's a whole host of players. If we're just talking about Bologna, I've mentioned David Soria, Oscar, multiple times at Getafe, who I think is in line for the Zamora Trophy this season. Getafe have had a bit of a fall off towards the back end of the season, but he's been exceptional between the sticks.
There's a few keepers in the Liga who could be potential options.
There's a lot of people saying Jean Garcia as well, but I don't think.
I think that one's probably slightly out of our. It's fair. It's got a release clause of 25 million. I do know that, but it kind of looks like that one's a fight between Barcelona and Arsenal, to be honest.
But where do we get? Okay, so let's bring this conversation back a little bit because we're speaking about permanence here a little bit, and I think it was important that you've mentioned loan signings and free signings as well, and that's what we wanted to speak about again today. So we kind of look at some of the free ones as well. I like the look of Kenny Tete. We've mentioned him before. I like the look of Kyle Walker-Peters. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the likes of Decore, who's out of contract. I wanted to get your thoughts on the likes of Callum Wilson. I wanted to get your thoughts on the likes of Vladimir Kufal. How careful do Leeds United have to be? Souček is obviously not a free agent, but he's 10 to 15 million quid, Oscar. He's on 90 grand a week. How careful have we got to be with some of these signings? Because you just mentioned previously that you want to go profile heavy and not go experience heavy. I'm the exact same. I don't think there's many examples. I literally can't think of that many, really, in terms of the first season back in the Premier League, where a lot of the successful teams, I'm talking Bournemouth, I'm talking Fulham, I'm talking Brentford, I'm talking Brighton, I'm talking others who have come up and just thought we're going to go heavy. Hybrid, as Joe Donahue mentions, but it's how far over on the hybrid are we talking here? Because if it is a 50-50, that's where I'd be a little bit worried when it comes to a bit of a recruitment plan.
Yeah, I mean, to start with, Souček and Doucouré, for example, obviously Souček at West Ham. My thinking of these players is, I mean, Doucouré is one who profile-wise actually suits what I was kind of looking at in midfield. You know, someone who can, cover ground really well, physical, box to box, has a lot of energy. But that was Doucouré maybe a year ago. I'm not so sure it's the Doucouré now, for example. I think you've kind of seen a physical drop-off with Doucouré. And I do think with profiles like that in midfield, the drop off can be quite sudden. We kind of saw the similar thing with Matthijs Klick a little bit in terms of when he got to sort of his mid to late, not mid to late, mid 30s, when he got to like that 33, 34 age bracket, you sort of saw a drop off from Matthijs Klick at that point. So you have to look at it as well from the point of view that West Ham and Everton, as much as they probably don't see us as rivals right now, if we are to stay up, they are the types of team that we're going to have to drag into a relegation battle, probably. And if they're not deemed as good enough for West Ham and Everton, who are probably trying to finish above those kind of teams, if they don't push on this season, why would there be suddenly players that could elevate us up the league, from 18th upwards? That's the way I'd look at it from that point of view. Now, listen, they could be good squad players, but I think if you're trying to make signings like that on the types of wages that they would demand as well, I'm not sort of seeing it. I mean, Callum Wilson, to be fair, is slightly different because West Ham and Newcastle are far higher up the league, but injuries is the key one with Callum Wilson. I think the other thing as well is Callum Wilson a striker who's ever really performed for 38 games, consistently, or even 30 games, in a season? He kind of is a bit of a purple patch player to me. Don't get me wrong, if he was an option off the bench or as a backup or, it's just an option, it'd be a decent one, but I can't look away from that injury record and potential cost. And he's one of those players that I think if he was on the pitch for us, I think he'd get goals because he's a player who scores goals at this level. There's no question about that. But I think his costs per million or per goal would be humongous in that kind of regard because I just don't think he'd be on the pitch enough. So those types of player I probably avoid. Kenny Tete, slightly different because Fulham was slightly higher up the league, but I think if you're making signings like that, I think it's one or two at the absolute maximum, maybe one I'd probably go for. But I think profiles is the key thing. Obviously striker, I've already talked about Boniface and Barry, but I think someone who can press from the front for starters, set the press.
I wanted to ask you about. I've not spoken to you towards the back end of the season about any of these players. So you're just speaking about a profile there. One that's sort of mixed Leeds fans a little bit is Beto at Everton. Obviously, you've been on that side of the country as well, mate. Obviously, you'll know a little bit more about it when it comes to reputation. But when we're talking about profile-based players, I think he can be overlooked a little bit by Leeds United, but Leeds United fans, I should say. But from my perspective, I think he fits a little bit more of a mould than maybe other teams. Obviously, we can't forget his time in Udinese as well, where he was performing. But I think
he's a popular player at Everton, and it's not like a cult hero kind of way. He's genuinely proved himself when he's played games.
And it comes to my final point, Oscar. You're going to have to spend money to get him, aren't you? It's not going to be a £50. It's not. I think initially about 2 weeks ago when it was first discussed, and it's obviously just paper talk, but we kind of suggested when I was speaking to a couple of people about it that it was going to be a 10 to 15 million quid signing and it'd be fine. But it feels like right now it's going to be a little bit more than that. With obviously his he should have got two yesterday as well, shouldn't he?
Yeah, he's far from complete. I'll say that much about Beto. I don't think there's anything he particularly, especially stands out to him, but I just think he's a solid player at this level. I think I'd be a little bit underwhelmed, I can't lie, if that was our main striker signing. I think the most attractive thing about signing Beto is the fact that it's week in arrival. Yes, Everton would obviously replace him and probably would be, looking higher up the order in terms of proven strikers. But if that proven striker didn't work and they gave Beto to us, it'd be interesting to see how that would kind of play out. But I would like to think we can name him higher, to be honest, or aim for someone where the ceiling's higher. Maybe it might be a little bit more risky, but Liam Delap last summer was a risky signing by Ipswich, by the way, because you've hardly scoring goals at Championship level. So never mind Premier League level, but that's an example where the profile works, kind of thing. Jack Clark's the opposite end of the scale. He's a player who's proven himself at Championship level, proven himself to be Premier League capable in terms of he's far, far too good for the Championship. But the profile of how he plays doesn't fit the Premier League in terms of he hasn't got the pace and power, and he's relying on his skill then, and his skill doesn't stand out against a higher quality fullbacks. So we've seen that. We've seen that at least once at Premier League level. Obviously, twice if you include Tottenham as well in that. So that is an example where you've got to just be so careful. Because I actually thought people like Jack Clark would be good signings, but when you get the benefit of hindsight, you see why it doesn't work, and that's got to be a learning for Leeds as well. In terms of the profile of the player is the most important.
Well, moving on to, I wanted to talk about as well and get your thoughts on two separate bits. So if we're talking about loan signings in particular, one that's always sort of perked my interest is Julio Enciso. Now, he's been at Ipswich. I think a lot of the complaints from Ipswich fans is it's been a bit of a chopping and changing from central attacking midfield to left wing. I think a lot of Ipswich fans have seen him out on that left-hand side, and I don't think they think he's great in terms of productivity. I think when you sort of see Enciso, you understand why he's got that sort of inversion about him, because he's obviously a good ball striker as well, and he's efficient when he inverts and goes into that central space. But I think he's got a lot of similarities to Manuel Solomon in tight spaces. I think he's good on the half turn as well. I would have liked to have seen him in that central space a little bit more for Ipswich. I think you saw him in there where he got player of the match against Brentford, and he was very, very good. Tearful at the end as well. I wonder if Leeds United could explore that again. Oscar, we're talking about loans again, and maybe apply him in that central attacking midfield space. I mean, what's your thoughts on someone like Julio Enciso? I mean, I can see a lot of people saying El Canoes. That would be obviously a bit dreamy, but we're kind of just trying to focus right now. I'm kind of mixing and matching, obviously, when it comes to profiles, but would that be the profile in terms of a loan? Because that's what you'd expect Leeds to potentially go for.
I think he's certainly an option in Enciso. I do think there's better options out there. I do believe that. I think maybe one or two loans might be an option for us. But I think the first thing to say about strikers in terms of the three behind the main centre forward is we need to see what's happening with Manuel Solomon for starters, because that is something that's going to kind of dictate quite heavily our transfer business. Because if Manuel Solomon didn't re-sign, if we weren't able to renew him or bring him in on the permanent, whatever way you want to put it, or even bring out another loan to bring in Manuel Solomon back, we'd have to really rethink the attack, because the left wing would then all of a sudden look a little bit less stacked than it was before. In terms of, obviously, it's down then to largely Ramazani, who I think will step up next season. I do believe that, but I'm not sure he's fully convinced Daniel Farke just yet, or he's fully, for whatever reason, hasn't convinced Daniel Farke just yet. So I do think we probably need to sign another winger. So that probably takes away a bit of the budget for the 10 kind of thing, if that makes sense. So I think when you do recruitment, it's got to be in sort of three blocks. You've got to look at your defensive side of things, middle third, and final third. I think you've just got to break it down into those and sort of make sure that they're all kind of evenly balanced. And we'll look at the 10. I do look at certain 10s in the Liga who are playing for like lower end Liga clubs who I think could easily step into the Premier League. Although the thing to consider with a 10 is that what I wouldn't do so much is sign a number 10 in the profile of a obviously not saying.
I agree with you. It's that it's more you kind of. I think there's an evolved role now. I think it's an advanced 8. I don't think 10s are a thing anymore.
Yeah,
I really don't.
I think what I was going to say was I wouldn't necessarily sign a number 10 who's big and powerful. I think I'd rather have a number 10 who's still key in between the lines kind of thing. But what you've got to make sure is that you complement that with energy around him kind of thing. You don't want to have a weak midfield that gets overrun really easily. In terms of that's what I think Ipswich have kind of found this season with Enciso. They haven't kind of got the legs around him. Obviously, Calvin Phillips is a shadow of the player he once was. Obviously, Sam Morsey hasn't really stepped up to the Premier League level really as expected. That's what you've got to be really careful of. If you're signing, everything's got to connect. All the pieces have got to connect together kind of thing. Your left back's got to connect with your left winger. Your number 10's got to connect with your midfield. It's all got to be sliding parts and all got to connect. So it's no good just saying, "Oh, let's sign the best number 10 on the market," kind of thing. If that number 10 can't run, and then you've also got a midfield that can't run, it's just not going to work. It has to be sliding parts. Everything has to work together. So I think with every signing we make, and that has been something the 49ers have been absolutely brilliant at, with every signing we make, we've got to think about the signing or the current player in the squad who can complement that kind of thing. So I look at if we bring in a number 10 who's going to lose the ball a lot, say like a Jorginho Rutter, but the positives will outweigh the negatives, like a Jorginho Rutter. I'm not saying Rutter, by the way. I'm just saying that kind of number 10. I think that is what we've got to sign. There's no good signing another Brendan Aronson, for example, who's going to be more about off the ball work. I think it's got to be someone who's silky and will open the game up for us, kind of thing. More traditional kind of number 10, because I think we've got enough players who can, cover the number 10 spot from a physical point of view. But I think in terms of technical quality, that's somewhere where I think we need to step up a little bit in that position. And in CISO, I look at and I just think there's a lot of better players than CISO in terms of in the Liga and Bundesliga and elsewhere.
Well, I completely agree with you. I mean, Kershaw's just said here, and keep getting your comments in, everybody. Ipswich spent a lot of money, didn't get enough experience, and went down. Don't forget, we'll be spending most of the time defending. I do sort of agree with that. I don't think you can really compare, though, Leeds and Ipswich. I think Leeds in the Premier League is a juggernaut. I think Ipswich, we're trying to, I think there's a lot that can be. I mean, I looked at Ipswich's window. I did think they missed out in a few key positions we've just been speaking about in CISO. Then I don't think his role was ever solidified. Did they have enough creativity in that team? I'm not sure they did, to be honest with you. I think there's a few squad balance issues, which I think a lot of Ipswich fans would attest to as well. I think there was just a bit of an inconsistent.
Were they ever that good? It's a genuine question. Last season, the element was massive.
Well, we're obviously speaking about free transfers and bargains and loans and this, that, and the other. I'm just not sure you can rely for periods on players like Cameron Burgess and Massimo Luongo effectively in the Premier League for space. I don't think you can do it. Like, we shouldn't be relying on certain personnel as well. But I'm not entirely sure Ipswich's recruitment was ever, I do wonder whether or not it was an understanding that they were, that white flag was almost, in the air already, because they understood that they had a League One squad. They were effectively recruiting for the Championship with players who had sell-on value as well, which I think is smart in its own sense. And then they go up again, which probably would be the long-term plan. And then they will be able to give it a better go. But I think when you look at the recruitment of Ipswich, I don't think you should put it in the same bracket as Leeds United. I think Leeds are going to make a much bigger fist of it. And the thing is, guys, Leeds are a bigger club as well. We've got a bigger pull. That's the thing. When you kind of look at the recruitment at a level when Leeds went up last time, and some of the players we actually brought in, when you're looking at, that sort of first season, when you're looking at Rodrigo Valencia's number 9 and Spain's number 9 at the time, then you bring in players like Rafinha. I don't think any of the 6 clubs that have gone down in the last 2 seasons are able to do that. And I think that is the pull of Leeds United ultimately.
Well, this is why I'm talking about people like Boniface, for example, who aren't getting games at Leverkusen at a very good age. That kind of player, maybe 1 or 2 of them. That's what I mean. With Leeds in 2020, we did get 1 or 2 star signings and then complemented it with, players who were decent in the first season. Yes, there was a drop off after that. Like Llorente, Robin Koch kind of fell off a cliff after that first season. But fundamentally, a lot of the idea was quite good in 2020. It just never came to fruition after that. But that's a good example, really, in terms of where to learn. And I do think if we're making big marquee signings, the positions I'd look at for the marquee signings are goalkeeper potentially, centre back potentially, basically across the spine. Goalkeeper, centre back, less so midfield, number 10, striker. When we're talking about big money signings, like if you're talking about sort of spending 25, 30 million on one player, those are the 4 positions I'd look at. I don't think there's any point really spending that kind of money on the winger. I just don't think the gain is enough to justify spending that kind of money. But I think maybe 1 or 2 big signings could make a massive difference. Morgan Gibbs-White is a great example in the sense that he was there for Forest, their big signing for 45 million. Listen, can we spend 45 million on one player? I'm not sure. I think obviously FFP is a lot tighter now than what it was for Forest at the start of that time, and that's something to also consider with certain players, and not just the players we try and sign, the players we try and sell as well to try and help us in terms of FFP. Because I think obviously there will be some players who probably move on. I think that's natural whenever you get promoted, and I just think certain things need to be clarified as well. Obviously, Junior Firpo, what the situation is there at left back, because potentially if Junior Firpo doesn't stay, if Sam Barron doesn't stay, then you have to sign 2 new fullbacks as well.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge in itself. And positions that were great for us last season, you don't want them to suddenly become positions that we need to strengthen in massively. And when I say strengthen, I mean spending big parts of the budget.
Yeah, of
You
course.
don't really want to be signing 2 new fullbacks when you've got a 10, a 9, a goalkeeper, and possibly a centre back to sign, for big money. That's kind of the point I'm alluding to. So when I
Yeah.
said before, it all kind of links in earlier on in a roundabout way to when I said we probably won't have a complete squad, a squad that you look at and think every single position is covered. It's just not the reality. I think we're going to have to compromise in certain spots because otherwise, if you try and change too much too soon, you end up like an Ipswich. But if you don't change enough, you end up like Southampton and Leicester. So it's all about the balancing act as well with it. But I do think the 4 key positions are across that spine: goalkeeper, centre back, another option for Pascal Strauchan, Joe Rodon, number 10, a striker. I think they are the 4 critical positions that we've got to get right.
Well,
Absolutely got to get right.
Well, Motion says, is Willian linked with Leeds? Willian is not linked with Leeds. He's on the thumbnail because there is a free and loan recruitment drive that we're talking about in this video, and Willian is a free. Oscar, could I tempt you on the Brazilian and his trickery?
Yeah, actually, I actually missed Willian off on the first list, but yeah, it's a potential option. I mean, a Willian, for example, depends on what happens with Manuel Solomon. I think if Manuel Solomon didn't sign, he can get Willian on a free.
Yeah.
Again, there's some similarities in terms of the players, in terms of how they tend to play. I think obviously tend to love to.
The big thing with him is it's just the agility, isn't it? Over 5 yards, and over 5 yards, Willian has still got that agility.
Yeah, the engine. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think he should be a starting wing for us, Willian. I will say that much. I think as an option to see out games or tactically, for certain games, say your Man City aways kind of thing to track back.
Yeah,
whoever plays right back for Man City, that could be a little option there. But again, it's not one that massively appeals. It's kind of a 6 out of 10 kind of sign, isn't it? Really, but
well, let me throw some names at you, and I just want to get a simple yes
or no.
Yes or no, yeah. Okay. Nelson Semedo.
No.
Okay. Vladimir Kufal.
No.
Okay. Ben Davies.
Just to check, Ben Davies at Tottenham, Ben Davies. Yes. Yeah, I would.
Okay, interesting. Kyle Walker-Peters.
Yes, as backup.
I'm surprised you're saying that. I'm surprised you're saying it with Kyle Walker-Peters.
I think I said yes to Nelson Semedo as backup, actually, on second thoughts.
Over Kyle Walker-Peters?
Oh.
Do you know what's interesting?
About Walker Peters, if he can play right back and left back, and I think as a backup player, that's quite a handy.
I also think with Kyle Walker Peters, he's a better defender. I think Semedo's arguably better getting forward, which might facilitate a foul.
Yeah.
I think Nelson Semedo replicates more of what Bogle does as opposed to Kyle Walker Peters. I think Kyle Walker Peters is a different profile. I think Kyle Walker Peters is probably a little bit more similar to Vladimir Kufal.
Yeah, I won't go Kufal though. I just don't think I think he has gone past his best. I think Kufal a year or two ago had said it's but no, yeah, I'd definitely say yes to Walker Peters as backup.
Okay, so we've got a few there interesting. Now, this is one that I wanted to throw at you. I'm a big no on this, but do you think Leeds could make a move on this because of if the manager's got a hand in recruitment, mate, which I think he might have? Jamal Lewis.
Nah, it wouldn't be one for me, that. No, too risky that kind of signing for me.
Not for me either, but I don't know. Hopefully it's not a return to, obviously he brought Lewis through and Aarons through at the same time, didn't he, Farker? Callum Wilson.
Again, they need a bit more context, but it's going to be a no. But yeah, it's probably a no, to be fair. If you can get him it's incredibly unlikely, but if you can get him on decent wages.
Well, I know what. Well, he's on 46 grand a week.
That's heavy if he's not going to play though. So when I say not going to play, I mean just not be fit enough to play. That's the intense style we play with. The pressing. Would his body be able to hold up with that for 38 games?
See,
I'll say no. I'll say no.
This is kind of so. Just hold there because actually getting you to say yes or no is a definite development. It's
like you've. But with Callum Wilson, there does need to be some context because there's no doubt if Callum Wilson was fit for 25 or 30 games, and there was a
100%.
realistic chance of that,
100%.
it's 100% a yes. And
It is a
I'd
yes.
actually pay a fee for Callum Wilson, even if he wasn't out of contract, if he gave me that kind of option. Obviously, his medical history is not the most encouraging in terms of injuries.
Oscar has missed 20 games this season with 2 separate injuries, hamstring and a back.
Yes, and hamstring. I think Callum Wilson's got to be at 31, 32 now, maybe older than that.
He's 33.
I think if you're having hamstring issues at 33,
and back issues, by the way, back issues
as well. I mean, back issues. And
do you know what?
Yeah.
Hamstring feeds into your back as well.
Yeah. Well, it's probably that's what I mean. Most when you get to that kind of stage that Callum Wilson's at, where he's just constantly injured, the injuries do start to interlink a little bit because
this is the issue. This is the issue for me, and I want to get into the rest of it, of course. But this is the issue when people are talking about experience too much. I think the obvious thing is the high wage demand, which at that point in your career, there's a whole notion that players are going to demand less money when they get older. I think it's going to be the complete opposite because there's more considerations when you're looking at the personal life, moving kids, moving your life somewhere else, especially if it's like abroad or something, you want a big pay packet. I think that's false. I think when players do move at this age, there's more consideration about the wage. I think that's why you kind of get more clubs going towards looking at, for example, when I think it was either, I think it was Mbuemo came from Troyes in France. It was an unbelievable bit of business. I don't know if he came from League 2 in that period as well, but you had Visser coming from Lorient. Players these teams in the Premier League are looking at or top of the Championship, which was what Brentford were when Visser signed. But they're looking at players on the continent of which are lower wage, but they transition attribute-wise to the Premier League, which we can't be that arrogant to say that players can't do that on the continent. It's some of the best players we've seen. But, Oscar, what I'll say on top of that as well is there's value there. But when you're looking at experience, which everyone keeps going on about that apparently you need above anything, which I do get to a certain extent. People are right, but I think it's got to be a hybrid, very, very much favoured in the profile side of things. Like me and you have just discussed. I think it's higher wages. It goes against PSR, which it does naturally, because obviously it goes against your revenue, it's your transfer and your wage structure. And on top of that, I think there's a natural decline in performances. Like when you get beyond 30 years of age, in the next 18 months, you are going to see a massive degradation in your performance. It's going to happen. So I think these are all things that you have to consider when we're talking about investing. I mean, there's been a lot of chat about Kufal. Kufal's on a lot of money. He's on a hell of a lot of money. Decore is on a lot of money. If you want to go out and get Souček, of course, you're going to spend a fee on him, but it's not just the fee. It's not the 10 to 15 million. Man City were just talking today. They've pulled out of the Florian Wirtz transfer because it's going to cost them up to 300 million quid. That's not an outlay in money. That's everything. When you're looking at a player contract, when you look at the wages, the bonuses, if Souček's to come in at Leeds, we're going apparently with Everton for his signature, if you're to believe reports. Leeds are going to have to put a big contract down, big wages down, and we're going to have bonuses in that contract. That contract, that transfer overall could cost Leeds 20 to 22 million quid when you're looking at everything encompassed. So you've got to take that into consideration. And big thing, Oscar, the big thing, there is no resale value for any of these players. You're not going to get resale for Vardy. You're not going to get resale for Souček. You're not going to get it for Decore. And this has been the whole problem. That was, a big problem with the likes of Rodrigo, wasn't it? We offered him a 4-year contract when he was 29. We brought him in for 30 million quid, which wouldn't have just been 30 million quid, by the way, because he'd have been on a massive contract. So Leeds had about to outlay loads of money on that. And, I don't think we saw the best of Rodrigo. He really didn't fit the system. But the whole point is, mate, with experience, I think you've just got to be really careful.
Of course you have. And what I'd say about Brentford and Brighton, and you can throw Bournemouth into this, you can throw Fulham into this, teams that have Crystal Palace, teams that have, really got great value for money from the signings and that lot, and they've got a fantastic hit rate with signings, is the style of play as well. I think the biggest thing as well is to establish how we want to play next season. Are we going to evolve and adapt our style like Brentford did? Because Brentford in the Championship compared to Brentford in the Premier League were two totally different animals, two totally different teams.
One was attacking in the Championship, wasn't it? The other, they adapted. They became a set piece side. They were defensively minded in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think to be fair, they've got a bit more. I think they started out incredibly defensive, but I think they have got a little bit more adventurous as time's gone on. I think that's natural. But I think in that first season, you have got to be pragmatic, and that's what Brentford were. I think they played to the percentages. I think often you saw David Raya would just pump the ball onto Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney would win the header, and Guemo was run off him kind of thing. And it'd be very much a 5-3-2 kind of system where it was basically if Toney and Guemo didn't deliver, Brentford didn't score. It was quite as simple as that. And yeah, I'm not necessarily saying Leeds need to go to a back five and things like that, but I think for signings like, say, a Visser to work, to work, you've got to look at the style of play, whether it's going to suit slow, methodical build up. Probably wouldn't have suited Wisser, if he signed for Brentford and they kept the same style of football. That could have easily been a flop kind of thing. You see with Southampton, for example, say some of the signings they have made, some of them I think could have worked had they evolved their style a little bit. In terms of strikers, a couple of strikers they brought in, say a Cameron Archer, for example, maybe could have worked to play the slightly more direct style of football in terms of got him up against the high line kind of thing and played balls over the top into him for him to run onto. That could have possibly worked. But that's the key thing as well to consider. It's going to be difficult to make recruitment until we establish how we want to play. And I'm sure we already have an idea under Daniel Farke how we want to play next season. But it's two very different things. If we're going to stay to do what we did this season in terms of quite methodical build-up, high possession, high pressing, or we're going to go
something but it's like when you look at Souček, Souček, like you just mentioned, mate. Souček,
he's a prime example. He's a prime example.
Well, me and Gabe were talking yesterday, and Gabe, I completely disagreed with him. Gabe was saying, and we've had disagreements with Gabe before, but Gabe was saying he's a good ball player. No, he's
not. He's absolutely not.
Souček is not a good ball player. So if Daniel Farke wants to not effectively dominate the ball, but he wants players who are good on the ball, certain profiles, we keep using that word, but certain profiles in that midfield, Souček can't be brought in. Vardy is a certain profile of striker. We're all very, very well aware of what Vardy brings. Leeds, are we going to facilitate that? I don't know if we are. I mean, I tell you what, Oscar, let's move on to a few more. Sergio Reguilon, yes or no?
No.
Okay, we're going to get into a few more comments in a little bit, everybody, so I can see the suggestions there. Carlos Vinicius at Fulham.
No, not for me.
Okay, Fulham have got some big hitters leaving, actually. Tom Kearney, Willian, Carlos Vinicius, and Kenny Tete. Kenny Tete, I thought we mentioned him.
Yes, back up, yes.
Out of interest, I think there's some decent right backs here, actually, that Leeds could
pick up. The right back market's all right, to be fair.
If you're looking at Semedo, Kenny Tete, Kyle Walker-Peters, which one are you picking up?
Semedo will be bottom of the list. He'd be comfortably bottom, and there's room between Tete and Walker-Peters. Walker-Peters, what really appeals to me, as I said before, he can play right back and left back, and if we are not going to be able to keep Junior Firpo, it reduces the pressure a little bit, or us to make other full-back signings if we can get Walker-Peters over the line. Tete, more proven at Premier League level in terms of out-and-out performances on paper. There's no question about that. I think he's played a couple of games this season as well, but obviously I'm going to say Kenny Tete, I'd say.
Yeah, I go Tete as well.
It's a toss of the call. I'd go Kenny Tete, I think. Just because he has shown he can play at this level. Walker-Peters hasn't quite done that yet.
Maybe just ahead. Yeah, just ahead.
Yeah. But the versatility really appeals to me from Walker-Peters.
There's one that I'm going to shout at you, and not shout, but I'm going to talk to you about in a little bit, of which I'm interested in. When you look at
Rafael
Leao. Kevin De Bruyne. Axel Franzebe and Cameron Burgess. Cameron Burgess is an interesting one. He's an interesting one. A lot of potential, I think, there. Would he be worth it, though? I'm not sure.
Maybe fourth choice centre-back, but...
Doesn't tickle your pickle, does it?
Yeah, I'd rather just bring someone through from the academy, a fourth choice centre back, than it's as risky as Cameron Burgess for me doing that.
Yeah. The Webinator says, Semedo wore the R-band for Wolves this season, so he must have a lot about him. The thing is, the Webinator, they let him go. So
the key thing as well is Semedo is playing wing back. I mean, we've seen this before with Wolves in terms of the lesson of don't sign a wing back when you plan to play a back four. AKA Barry Douglas kind of thing, all them years back kind of thing. They can look fantastic playing as a wing back, but that's such a key context in terms of the whole role between a wing back and a full back, totally different. And that might be something that Liverpool find with Jeremy Frimpong potentially? I don't think they will, but it's something they could potentially find next season. So there you go. I would sign Jeremy Frimpong, by the way, just to clarify, if there was an option.
That's good. Robin Olsen at Villa.
No,
I think he's a bit mistake-ridden, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think listen to this. Listen to this. Are you aware of how many out-of-contract players Everton have? Do you want to hazard a guess? It is ridiculous.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
I'm talking even like a lot, probably about 70% first teamers as well.
12.
11, unlucky.
Oh, okay. I knew it was something insane.
Yeah, so DCL, Abdoulaye Doucouré, Michael Keane, Idrissa Gueye, João Virginia, Ashley Young, Seamus Coleman. They've actually doubled the player on there, actually, so I think it's 10. Asmir Begovic, Mason Holgate, Neil Maupay. So none of them tickle your pickle?
Maybe Doucouré is like a fourth or fifth choice midfielder as an option for certain games, but the wages he'll be on, probably not now.
That's literally what I was just about to say. Yeah, just for context, in 2025, he will have earned 6.7 million quid. So I think he's on.
Yeah, so that's.
I think he's on a. I think he's on a
window, that one.
Yeah. So as he said, yeah, that's it. So currently, according to Capology, which is pretty decent, Abdoulaye Doucouré is on 130 grand a week. So that is a lot of money. Okay, moving on. The Brighton and the Brentford ones are quite interesting. A lot of Leeds fans have been speaking about these two in particular, or three, maybe even four. I'm going to start with one. Ben Mee.
36, isn't he? I think. Yeah. As soon as I saw that age, I said no. I would have said yes if I didn't know he was 36, but no.
Yeah, completely agree. Tariq Lamptey.
You're in a similar waters to Callum Wilson here in terms of injuries, kind of thing. Tariq Lamptey, I think, is a really, really good player. I would still believe that. I think
there's a reason. There's a reason, though, isn't there, why they're letting him go? Because of the potential he's got and the player that he is. It's injuries, isn't it? It's injuries.
The injuries aren't going to allow him to reach the potential. There's a lot of players you can say this about. I think Tariq Lamptey, unfortunately, is going to be one of those players. I think fully believe at one point, when he first came through at Brighton, that he could be a potential England player. I really did believe that at one point. But I don't know, he must be more 22, 23 now, Tariq Lamptey as well, which isn't old by any means, but he's kind of had 3 or 4 years now of not really progressing in his career, mainly down to injury. It's a no.
Josh Da Silva.
Ooh.
See, now let me just I had no idea this guy was on a free agent. I loved Josh Da Silva in the Championship. Now, some of the characteristics I absolutely loved about him: press resistant, athletic, combative, a proper runner, tall, physical. Josh Da Silva, and look you look at that Brentford team in central midfield. I think they've got a lot of quality, and I think you're never going to really displace Norgard in there, are you? When it comes to the presence that he is, and I think they've got a little bit more technicians in around him, or Janel as well, who I know can play.
It's like Damsgaard kind of really established himself in that team now as well.
You had in that period, didn't you? Had Jensen as well, who was a technician, and you've kind of had, but yeah, you're right. Damsgaard is a regular feature now. Then obviously you've got Janel, and then you've got Norgard. I just don't see a place for Josh Da Silva there, and obviously they see something quite similar as well. So I like Josh Da Silva. He's only 26, he's only 26.
Maybe he's a fourth or fifth midfielder. I don't think the way I look at it is I don't picture Josh Da Silva as being someone who's going to start a lot of games for us if we did sign him, for example. But I think he's someone who off the bench,
more of a 6 as well, isn't he?
20 minutes could add something to a game, kind of thing.
Well, more of a 6 as well, Oscar, isn't he?
Yeah, I'd probably say no, to be honest. But it's quite I'm quite sad to say no to that. It's not like a Kufal. It's like no kind of thing. This is more of a sad no kind of
I think
thing.
I think he'd be a very, very good pickup for a newly promoted side. But maybe I agree. He's the one
I think
who.
he goes into the championship next season. He'll do a hell of a job for someone like a Birmingham next season. That's where I see Josh De
Mate,
Silva essentially.
I could see it with the PSR restrictions currently. I could see Sheffield United going in for a few of these. I really could.
But yeah, they will. They probably will. Yeah, it's what Sheffield United do, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, it is. Well, talk to me about. I mean, Paul's just said we should be reaching a lot higher. Let's get into a few comments. We can't hear Oscar at all. That feels like a century ago. Can't wait to have to. I will put the timestamps on everybody. Also, this will be going. This will be going on Spotify and Apple. So bear with us. But you can reach us on One Leeds on Spotify and Apple now. Oscar, are there any young surplus players at Barca you think would be a good pickup for ourselves?
It's an interesting question. That I think. The problem is Barca's squad is quite small at the minute. So anyone who's not, mainly the squad is either players are contributing or they're very much limited to La Masia at this moment in time. So it's interesting. I mean, Jakubashvili as well, who is coming through as a goalkeeper, who Barca are very, very, very happy with at the minute. He's actually not played a minute for Barca in terms of in the main team. He's hardly played for Barca B either. Is someone who's very highly rated. Barca, I do know, are definitely trying to loan him out because they see him as a potential starter in maybe a year or two. So it is an option. He's only 18 though, so you're thinking, can we sign a goalkeeper who's only 18 realistically?
What about Penna? Inaki Penna, is he still about?
He is, but
not getting a game.
Look at Inaki Pena in terms of how good he is off his line in terms of sweeping. I think he's probably Barca's best goalkeeper in terms of in the current squad at sweeping. I'd say that much, but in terms of shot stopping, that's what you got to look at it as well from the point of view of Leeds as a goalkeeper. It's more about the shot stopping rather than what they can do with the ball at the feet at this level next season. Yeah, that's where they're going to really earn their money. And I just look at Pena, think
Ansu Fati.
Again, interesting one because Ansu Fati is a player who I think everyone's written off. I think including Barca fans in that. But his last couple of games, he's looked really sharp, but again, very sporadic appearances. Could be an option. Again, could be an option more so if Manuel Solomon isn't picked up permanently. I think if you sign Solomon and then sign Fati as well, I'm not sure that was kind of worked particularly well. But could be a potential option. Hector Forts is someone who
I was about to
mention potential. He has shown potential. Probably does need a loan. I think he's not maybe Hansi Flick's favourite player at this moment in time. He's kind of not really performed this season. Potential option, can play right back and left back. But again, the experience factor comes into it. Another factor that comes into it is what we need them for is different to what Barca need them for. Barca's fullbacks, it's about going forward more than it is defensively. With Hector Fort, no doubt about his quality going forwards, but defensively, it's getting better. He's definitely getting better defensively. But again, he's in a similar kind of circumstance, say Gerard Martin, for example. Alex Fire, who's coming back from Celtic in summer. Again, kind of similar scenarios where they're much better going forward than they are defensively. In terms of in midfield, again, pretty much everyone's already involved. Tony Fernandez is incredibly highly rated, but again, I think he's literally younger than Lamine Yamal, so probably not an option. One player I do like, who I do think could step up to the Premier League, certainly in terms of technical quality, less so physically, is Pablo Torre, who is Barca's kind of third choice number 10, but kind of firmly third choice. He's never really threatened to be a starter for Barca. Again, showing quite a lot of potential. Pau Victor as well, striker, but again, can he step up to Premier League level?
You're really testing our Barca Buzz knowledge here, mate. So
it's,
I thought we could have had a chat about a couple of players, and I've done my best there. So let's.
That's what I mean. I think if you'd asked me a year ago on Barca, there's been a lot of players that have been thrown out at you there, but I think the squad has been trimmed down quite a lot. I just don't think Lamine Yamal wants to test the Premier League football just yet.
What about an interesting one as well on the continent? And chat, let us know in the comment section. But I think we've seen splutterings of it in the chat as well. Guys, if you haven't as well, make sure you like the video with me and Oscar here, please. Really, really helps. How many have we got liking right now? We have 319. We've got 600 in the building. Please make sure you're slapping a like on the video. Guys, what about Angel Gomez? He's announced that he's going to be leaving Lille on a free. Obviously, I was about to say
I'm going to get accused of being heightist here. I'm going to get accused of
he
being
is
heightist,
small.
but
He
the
is small.
first, as soon as you said it, Adrian Gomez for 5'2", I'm just thinking
Do you know what though? Do you know what though? I see him as very, very similar.
he's an exceptional player, by the way.
He's a exceptional player. He's on. Obviously, we know he's kind of on the periphery of England as well. He's played for them as well. He's an excellent presser. Work
What
ethic.
I'd say is,
reminds
it'd
me
be
reminds me very much of Tyler Adams.
well, what I'd say is, yeah, no, there's definitely that to it. In the right system, he can work. Like Tyler Adams is another example where in the Jesse Marsh system, where it was chaotic pressing, he was our best player. When Javi Gracia came in, yes, and then we got injured, he never looked the same player again, Tyler Adams. He had a huge drop off after Jesse Marsh left. Now,
Did you mean to say too small?
yeah, sorry, yeah, too small, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Angel Gomez, if we switch to a 4-3-3 or a midfield three and forget about number 10, Angel Gomez, alongside Alison Acker with a powerhouse behind him, I would say is a Premier League level midfield. I think that could work. But Angel Gomez in a 4-2-3-1, I just don't think physically that's going to work very well, off the ball. But I think in terms of if you can build a system where you can get the most out of him on the ball and push him higher up the pitch, no question about it, I'd sign him. But I just look at the fact that in terms of the aerial duels and things like that, physically being able to cover grounds very quickly, I just don't think that's Angel Gomez's best game.
Well, Carl says Mandela Keita, physical and quick. Yes, lad. I was going through a few players who I'd be looking at in this window.
I'm actually not aware of him, to be fair. I'm not aware of him.
Type him in afterwards, mate. Dean says, would you take Fabianski on a free because he has Premier League experience and European experience? Just the donation, mate.
Is he free?
Yeah,
Fabianski?
yeah, I think he is. No,
I think, yeah.
But I think if you move Darlow to your third and you go and get two goalkeepers in, but you have got to get you've got to have a second, haven't you? You've got to have a second who's maybe got that experience if Darlow's your third. So potentially, mate. I mean, Tom Eaton's leaving Man United, free agent. Cal says, "What's the likelihood of Soleil signing Connor?" Nil.
Yeah, that's
nil. There is someone else though in terms of Jacobijol who might be a very, very nice signing.
Yeah, I think perfectly complements Joe Rodon for me in terms of his style. Can play right-sided, left-sided, good on both feet. Again, that's one that kind of hope we do get over the line, really, if we can.
James says, my concern is I feel the more high-profile free agents will be looking for a more established. But that's exactly right, James. That's the problem you've got. That is the problem you've got because a player like Angel Gomez will have probably 15 clubs after him. He's only 24 years of age as well. Let's say he's on the periphery of the England side. He'll have a hell of a lot of offers across Europe as well. So, okay, do you want to get into maybe some of the conversation about? I mean, I wanted to discuss. It's a two-pronged conversation. I want to discuss the teams that are going down, Ipswich, Leicester, and Southampton. Are there any of those players of which you would maybe be looking at? I want to also discuss the likelihood of Leeds maybe investing in some championship players. And we've seen a pretty weak league, I think, this season when it comes to the championship in terms of caliber and quality. But maybe when we're looking at Leicester and Ipswich and Southampton, there's players that we can look at. Ugo Chukwu, Oscar, is someone who I've been going on about, very similar to Lavia at Chelsea, was on loan at Southampton this season and caught my eye when they played. It was match of the day, I think, when they played up against, it was either West Ham or Brentford, and he was outstanding. Played against Spurs and Spurs and might have been Bournemouth, of which he was just brilliant. I think he got man of the match on the last day of the season.
Yeah, I think that Spurs one he did, yeah.
Only 19, 20 years of age, absolute athlete, huge hopes for him in the future when it comes to Chelsea. There could be a loan move there. Don't think he's breaking into that starting 11 anytime soon. Looks like it's not quite worked for him at Southampton as well. There's a lot of promise there. You kind of look at Leicester, Mads Manson.
There's two that stand out from Leicester. Oh, there's three actually. There is three. Hermanson, I think the benefits outweigh the negatives. I think he will gain your points rather than lose your points through shot stopping. El Canoes is one that obviously really, really stands out. But it depends. I mean, El Canoes for me, it just screams to me as Morgan Gibbs White's replacement at Forest, because Morgan Gibbs White will move to like a City or an Arsenal, and it feels like El Canoes will go. I'm not saying it's in the know or anything, but it just feels like he will end up going to a West Ham or a Forest rather than to ourselves. And another player I'm going to throw out there is Fatawu. Of course, he's coming off a massive. The problem is he's coming off the back of a massive, massive injury, and I do think we could do with a left-footed winger. Just a different kind of option on the wings, but it's not a priority position. But it'd be interesting because I think Fatawu, had he stayed fit this season, would have probably been moving up the league. But the fact he's had a year out, could you take advantage of that? Another one as well. Of course, he's not connected to Leicester anymore, but the Leicester connections there, of course, is Dewsbury Hall, which I've actually seen already mentioned. Something like that could work quite nicely.
I think Dewsbury Hall is one of which you could look at genuinely and think that is a very likely signing. He's barely
played him as well. I think he's a Leeds type player in.
Yeah, he is 100%.
He's got a nastiness about him, which I like.
He's got a nastiness. He's quality. We all know he's quality. He'd have. It depends if we bought him. You feel like Chelsea are always willing to be in a deal, aren't they? They're always willing to at least have a bit of a conversation about a deal. But like I said, Ugachukwu, if you're able to maybe get a 2-for-1 deal and maybe get him and Dewsbury Hall on loan for the season, that could be some really good bit of business in terms of just legs and runners in the midfield, but also a bit of complementary technical ability as well in there. Oscar, I was going to do a bit of a dream Premier League sort of transfer window, really. Dewsbury Hall was right up there. Dewsbury Hall for me is, if we can do it, a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think so. The fact he can play at number 10 and he can play midfield 3, I think he has got legs about as well. He can get up and down the pitch quite well, and he suits the Leeds style of play. I think he's someone that is. He doesn't feel risky as well to me either. It seems a strange thing to say considering he hasn't actually performed at Premier League level just yet. He's played all right at Leicester at this level, but he's certainly better at Championship level than he was Premier League. But of course, he was already far too good for the Championship before he even dropped in there. So, yeah, do you want to talk about Championship as well?
Let's do it. Yeah.
It's a little bit on the results of the playoff final, but Isidore is one that just doesn't quite go out of my mind.
Glad you said that.
About Isidore.
Good minds, mate. Good minds.
I think he's got a Liam Delap kind of vibes to him for me, where I think he's not actually been the most prolific at Championship level. I just look at his profile and think that is a player who could step up into the Premier League. I think he's got the right, physically, he's the right fit for us. But it's weird because I've gone from talking about Victor Boniface and Barry at Villarreal to a Championship striker who's scored less than 20 goals this season kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's all about fitting the right players in kind of thing. If you put Isidore behind a number 10 who's going to create loads of chances and be able to slip him through because he's so good at running in behind kind of thing, that is a potential option with the Dan James as well. So it's got to be players that all fit in kind of quite well. Isidore is someone I think tactically you fit in quite well in the system. Obviously, I'm seeing a certain Joe Bellingham being mentioned. Interesting one as well. Now, the only thing that puts me off a little bit with Joe Bellingham is the surname's going to add 10 million on straight away on his value, which could. He's a player who could easily end up being an overpay, quite a drastic overpay, which is something we've got to avoid. But I think Bellingham physically certainly suits us quite well. That'd be quite an interesting one as well. Anyone else from Sunderland? Not so sure. Sheffield United, Vinicius Souza, I actually like quite a lot. Might seem quite a large one to throw out there, but it's a kind of a third or fourth midfielder, just because he covers ground so well. I know it seems like quite a basic thing to say, but I just think Sheffield United are massively under.
I like him. It's just injuries again. It's injuries again.
Yeah, there is that. I think he's a much better player than what Chris Wilder shows. I think Chris Wilder limits him quite a lot. Enzo Lafay, no. I've just seen him mentioned. That's a big no for me. I think good player, but no, just hasn't shown enough. Dennis Sirkin again. I think defensively.
I think moving back to just Isidore Oscar. I think the interesting part of that is I think if you work on a counter-attacking style as well, I think over a short period he's rapid. He's absolutely rapid, and we do have to make. I think that. When you it's almost like slow build-up play. I don't think that facilitates Isidore at all.
This is as well.
I think quick counter-attacking football, of which is what Leeds are probably going to have to develop at points next season. I think we're well aware of that, and maybe that can be facilitated by the likes of Dan James. But I think if that quick counter-attacking football and players like Tanaka, who are able to play the ball into that certain space in and behind and turn the centre-backs around, of which we can do in the Premier League. You know, we do still have capable footballers, technicians, of which hopefully we will bring in as well. I think that would work really nicely with Isidore, and he's one of those players as well who I think he likes the ball to feet, which is a real advantage for a big man as well, because a lot of them like it in the air. But I think one to keep an eye on. Look, we don't want to go on about the Championship as me.
If you have me to pick one striker from the Championship who's going to step up to be as good in the Premier League and, you know, make that Ivan Toney, Jamie Vardy, Liam Delap kind of step up, it would 110% be Wilson Isidore. There's no question about that. But one other player I'm going to just throw out there, it's not Gus Hamer, it's not Gus Harmer, it's not, I just don't, physically, I just don't see it. I think style of play as well is very key with Gus Harmer. I don't really see it.
He's overweight.
Let me throw someone slightly different. He's played for the same club as Gus Harmer. People will laugh at this, and it's by no means my favourite option at number 10. It's just someone who I think could be quite good value and actually could have quite a big growth over the next couple of years. And I actually really do like the look of him. I feel like I'm going to laugh and say this. Jack Rudoni, I'm going to throw out there as an interesting option. Again, not someone who I'd say will start 30 games for us next season. I just think someone's an interesting option off the bench. I just think a lot of his qualities suit the Premier League level as well, and to step up. I like the fact that he's quite aggressive, covers ground quite well as well, and can play in different positions. By no means my favourite number 10 option, but just another option if a Dewsbury Hall or someone like that can't be signed. I see a few mentions of Michael Cooper as well, but
let's touch on Rudoni a little bit. I think he's had an exceptional period under Lampard. Mentality wise, he's a captain, in my opinion, at the young age of 23. I think his mental state is extremely good, and that's been shown in so many phases for Coventry this season, of which they're absolutely loving him. Apparently known for his maturity. I saw an interview with I think it was Lampard when they'd just got through the back end of the season. He was talking about Rudoni in particular, and he said he's almost never seen anyone with the professionalism levels at such a young age. As I say, he's a goal threat. Seems very much in the mold sort of as you sort of Dewsbury Halls, in terms of just being a bit of a Championship Lothario.
Well, fans have made a lot of comparisons to James Maddison in terms of when he first came through, kind of thing. Very similar. Obviously, he's not near as good as James Maddison, but similar kind of profile of player. It just depends on the style of play as well with Rudoni.
But he contributes on both sides as well for me, Rudoni. I've seen him several, when you've watched him several times, even in that Sunderland game, he is similar to Maddison, actually. When you get him in the game, if he's out the game, Coventry are out the game. As soon as Rudoni's in the game, things start to happen. And that's the first leg and the second leg as well, against a very good Championship side. I love his ball carrying. I think his ball carrying is very, very good. I think it's Premier League level. I don't think, why are you saying we'll laugh at you? Maybe it's because
I felt that was one that was maybe get a little bit of Huddersfield, Coventry, not maybe got the biggest CV kind of thing.
I think he's going to make his way to the top. There are actually rumours about Brighton and Everton looking at him a little bit.
Yeah, he screams Brighton, doesn't he? In terms of where he's not going to maybe be under pressure straight away. I think at Brighton, the thing they have is they've got such a settled core that they can just add in one or two really daring signings, can't they? And
it was like O'Reilly, wasn't it? It was like when they brought in Matt O'Reilly, your man.
Yeah.
It was a risk, wasn't it? It's a risk, and I think it's. I guess that we've got to look at it, and there's been loads of rumours about us with a lot of good players. I think that we've got to act our club, really, haven't we? This is the club who's brought in Rafinha, Sinisterra, Rodrigo, and these were all.
But these are all players abroad as well, in terms of getting decent value from. Maybe Rodrigo, maybe it was a slight, it probably wasn't overpaid, but certainly Sinisterra and Rafinha were pretty decent value. And can I just throw out a couple of players who are like from La Liga? You asked me before about, I'll just throw them into the mix, just get the list. Bear me 1 second. There was 3 players and
Can
was
tell he's been.
pretty keen on.
I'll get into a couple of comments. Dean says Walter Benitez from PSV is leaving in the summer on a free. He just won the league and is a decent GK. We'll have to have a look, Dean. Cheers, mate, for letting us know that. Riley says, can we really compete for Kelleher with some of the top clubs looking for signature? Riley, it's going to cost 40 million quid, and if we spend 40 million quid in a goalkeeper, I'm going to throw myself off the tallest bridge. Telly says Simicast for 10 and Josh Doig. You've got a ticket to my heart, Telly. Josh Doig from Sassuolo. Take care of left back with great depth for years, mate. I think the transition for Doig would be seamless. Simicast, I'm not sure you get him for 10, Telly, but now with obviously them bringing in Kirkes and having Robertson there, now we might be able to get him for a decent fee. But I think at 29, he's going to have a fair few clubs going for him, especially on the continent. Oscar?
Yeah, Brian Zaragoza is one to start off with from Osasuna. Left winger, can play anywhere across the three behind the striker. This one would depend a lot on Manuel Solomon's situation. If we get Manuel Solomon sealed and over the line, or if Spurs can't start to do what Spurs do and ask for crazy fees when they have absolutely no right to. Yeah, I'd say Brian Zaragoza is one option. He's absolutely tall. Jules Koundé to pieces earlier in the season, and Danny Carvajal as well at stages this season. Kubo at Real Sociedad, I like quite a lot for 2 reasons. It's the fact he can play in right wing and through the middle. I think it'd be incredibly good value because he's had actually quite a quiet season. But I see enough from him to say that he could step up into this league. Again, Salah plays quite a key one here, quite a key one in terms of how we'd look to play. But they're 2 players to look at, I think, because they've had I wouldn't say quiet seasons, but inconsistent seasons. I think had they been consistent, both players, they'd be linked with the best teams in Spain or the best teams in the Premier League. I genuinely do believe that. I think that Zaragoza actually signed for Bayern Munich 18 months ago and just completely didn't work out there. Wasn't really given a chance, to be fair. They're 2 players I've looked at this season when I've been watching the Liga games and thought, if we got promoted, and Barry as well at Villarreal up top is another one, but I think he'd be crazy money now, to be fair. I think he's probably kind of out of our budget. But they're 2 players that really stood out to us. Valles as well, who is goalkeeper, last played for Las Palmas, got a very complicated contract situation. Looks like he's already pre-signed for Real Betis. But if he hasn't, because no one actually knows what's happening there with that one. That's one to keep an eye on. Definitely someone who's gaining a lot of points over a season, but probably not even an option for us in the first place. But they're 2 big ones from the Liga that really stood out to me this season.
Okay. I wanted to get your thoughts, and it feels like there's a lot of Leeds fans talking about this. I don't know where they've got it from. And we spoke, Jordan says, breaking news on the One Leeds. There is a lot of conversations in the chat. Apparently, we've agreed terms with Simicast seeing it on another live. I've not seen this anywhere, mate. I've not seen this anywhere. I know there's a couple of Liverpool fans speaking about it online, but it feels like it's just an obvious link with Kirkes coming in and Robertson being number 2 now. I feel like obviously Simicast is probably heavily rumoured to Leeds, and that's maybe where they've jumped on it. Oscar, Simicast for you. I know you're not massively keen on it. Do I think there are better left backs out there? Yes. Do I think we can do maybe a little bit better than Simicast? I don't mind him. But I have the same, and look, we spoke about it a little bit off air, didn't we? Big name, Liverpool. Everyone's going to get excited by the grandeur as well. As one things with the club as well. They seem to like him in terms of a group. I think the worry I have, and I spoke to a couple of my mates as well who are massive Liverpool fans, obviously live in the area. Me and Oscar live in that well, effectively that kind of part of the world where there's loads of Liverpool fans. They're not. They said a couple of them have said to me today, if your backs are up against the wall and you've got Simicast there as a left back, he's going to be tested, and he's not been tested nearly enough at Liverpool. And when he has been tested, he's really struggled. So I think that's kind of where I'd be a little bit worried about him. He's a glossy signing, but it's not going to be the same Leeds United as the Championship Leeds United. It's going to be Premier League Leeds United, where I think you need a little bit of a more solid defensive player who can get forward, but I think primarily a solid left back. That's why I've mentioned Josh Doig before as well as what Telly's saying there is absolutely key. I'm not sure about Simicast. What about you, Oscar?
Yeah, I think I'm assuming we're going to stick with a back 4. I think if we're playing a back 3, even with allowing for Simicast's defensive frailties, I would definitely be happy with the signing if we're playing a back three, because you're going to get the most of his attacking output. And I think, believe you me, I think he's someone who is one of the best crossers in terms of the fullbacks in Premier League level. I think he's one of the best crossers of the ball at Premier League level.
His expected assists is third per 90 to Salah and Szoboszlai. But I think the big, just to add to what you're saying, mate, if we're playing a back three, there's a conversation that we keep hold of Junior Firpo. So it's
exactly, because I think if you're going to say that Junior Firpo is a question mark over him at left back because of his defensive frailties, then I'm not sure how you can say have a totally different opinion on someone like a Tsimikas. Don't get me wrong, Tsimikas is more proven than Junior Firpo. I won't question that for 1 minute. But is it worth spending 20 mil on Tsimikas or whatever it costs when there's only a slight upgrade on Junior Firpo and when there's probably other left backs you can sign? Because I think if a Premier League level, we're not going to keep the ball as well as we did last season. It's going to be much more about the defensive side of things from our full backs. It's a risky one for me. It's a risky one. I think he's a very, very good player. I just think he's more of a Brighton signing than he is a Leeds signing, if that makes sense. And that seems like a crazy thing to say because Brighton are probably higher up than us at this moment in time. But you've got to have the context of the style of football as well. It's the same with midfield as well. I don't really want to sign. I just think Tsimikas to me is a little bit of a luxury. But don't get me wrong, I'd be happy if we signed him. But I do think for the cost, I think there's probably other options we can pick up there. I believe that.
I see what people are saying. He is a lot better than Firpo, but once again, I think the context is it's the profile that we need to be looking at here. If we're like we've just been saying when we're talking about right backs, you'd kind of prefer a Kyle Walker-Peters as a comparison to a Semedo. You would prefer a Kenny Tete in comparison to a Semedo. They're probably a little bit more well-rounded, in my opinion. Jamal Lewis is another player of which I would categorize as a left wing back. I wouldn't be looking at him, not because of Jamal Lewis, the player, but the profile. And I think Tsimikas is very much of that mold. I think, as Oscar's quite rightly said, I think in a three, Tsimikas would be a really decent option. But I also think in a three for Leeds United, if we're more dominant at this level and maybe, we had the midfield coverage on the left-hand side of a midfield three to be able to, almost fill in that void when Firpo was bombing up and down, and we had a tactical plan to figure that out, and we built up on that side and attacked on that left-hand side, and that was a ploy. I'd be a little bit more convinced, but I think Leeds in our first season in particular, we know we're going to be in a 4-2-3-1. I don't think you can facilitate a Tsimikas. I don't think you can. I think it's very, very, very risky, to be honest.
It depends as well on the left side of centre back as well. I think with Jayden Bogle, Jayden Bogle's not fully proven defensively at Premier League level. Championship level he is, but Premier League level, I think you got Joe Rodon there covering. He's kind of like the perfect foil for a Jayden Bogle. I'm not sure Pascal in the same way. I'm not saying Pascal's not a good defender because he is. I'm not sure he could cover Tsimikas in the same way. Joe Rodon can cover Bogle, if that makes sense. And even the left-hand side of the pitch, if Solomon re-signs, and obviously you look at our left-sided options, it's just less intense off the ball than what the right side is. Obviously Dan James is on the right-hand side, can also cover for Bogle. I think we're just a lot more solid on that side, out of possession. And I just think Tsimikas, I think he's risky. I think he's definitely a good player. And in the right system, if we can build the right system around him, I think he can be a good player. But I think the same can be said for Junior Firpo. And don't get me wrong, Tsimikas is a better player than Junior Firpo. I'm not questioning that for 1 minute. But if you're looking to bring in someone who covers the weaker side of Junior Firpo's game, that probably isn't Tsimikas' game, if that makes sense.
I think they're very similar. I think one's better than the other, but they're very.
Tsimikas is slightly better in pretty much every aspect than Junior Firpo, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Nothing against Junior Firpo, by the way.
No, definitely. Completely agree. Okay.
Well, someone just mentioned Leif Davis there. Leif Davis, prime example. Still good going forward at Premier League level, by the way. He's not had a big drop-off going forward. And not having that for 1 minute.
But that's the whole Tsimikas thing. Tsimikas thing is his willingness to press, his energy, his endeavour. It's that almost Jurgen Klopp style, isn't it? Formerly, where it was just, you're bombing on your fullbacks. The problem is, with Tsimikas, is his positional awareness and his defensive duty have always been weaknesses. You talk to any Liverpool fan about it, they'll tell you that. So I think that as a newly promoted side would be would be a massive risk for me. But is there anything else you wanted to discuss, mate, in terms of like players or anything like that? I mean,
I think the main thing we've got to look at is obviously we've spoken about profiles. It's physicality. I mean, it's just got to be the ability to cover ground very quickly. I think that's got to be the priority. With 80 to 90% of our signings have got to have that in terms of pace and power, physicality, strength, height, ideally as well for aerial duels. Because set pieces, by the way, we've got to find certain things in our armory that can be strengths next season, that can be difference makers. Set pieces is one. Brentford is showing that, in terms of in the first couple of seasons, especially.
That's where
City,
that's where
after the Tony Pulis,
that's where
kept them up for years.
That's where Firpo's quite strong as well. When you look at
of course.
that. But can I also say as well? I mentioned this stat, Oscar, and just before you get into physicality as well, I mentioned this stat a little bit earlier on. But in terms of scoring from set pieces, 3 of the promoted sides comprised of the bottom 5 in terms of
shocking. That is shocking.
But as well, it's the throw of football now, where the throw of football is very much it's becoming, we've seen a back 4 game, haven't we, with Man City very, very recently. We've seen the physicality improve in the likes of Liverpool with Canate coming in. We're going to see the physicality improve a little bit more because I think Kirkez is a step up in terms of physicality and athleticism to the likes of Andy Robertson. But there's been a shift, I think, of the top 4, top 6 teams. You look at Newcastle's midfield now, Oscar, I keep mentioning it, Guimaraes, Joe Linton and Tonali, beasts, every single one of them. I think the top teams now have moved away from these diminutive techie players, luxurious players, and it kind of comes back to the conversation again of there being 8s now as opposed to 10s. I think it's all about industry, it's all about endeavour, it's all about energy, but it's about physicality and athleticism and runners as well. And I think that comprises in both boxes as well. I think you've got to defend set pieces, but you've got to attack them as well. And I think you're getting a lot of the teams, 90% of the teams now, looking for those incremental games. You look at Arsenal. Arsenal have just become, the Spanish Stoke City, haven't they? But they're still a very technically gifted side, hence why they finished second. So I think a lot of the top teams have started focusing on set pieces a little bit more, which is why you simply have to get it right, because those marginal gains are probably the easiest to scope up on when it comes to Leeds' recruitment side.
Yeah, exactly that. It's an interesting one. It's just, I think of the wages as well, Simicast be interesting. I'd imagine Andy Robertson is earning a lot more. And let's just say for argument's sake, here, that's all I'm saying. I don't believe this will be the case. Let's say Simicast and Robertson's only on slightly more money per week, and Kirkez is coming in. You look at it from the point of view of Kirkez is coming in to replace Andy Robertson. Why would you then sign the third choice left back for Liverpool when potentially Andy Robertson's not going to be playing much football for the next couple of years? Potentially, is it something like that becomes an option? Like Ramsdale going from Arsenal to Southampton, probably a bad example because that hasn't worked particularly well. But would it cost that much more to do Andy Robertson rather than Simicast? That would be the question. I think it probably was, but if it didn't, why not just go for Andy Robertson instead? Like genuine question there. I know it's daft as it sounds, because Andy Robertson I still think is a top class left back.
Yeah.
But where's Andy Robertson going to go now? That's like loads higher up than Leeds. Realistically,
abroad, maybe
in Atletico Madrid, maybe, but I don't know. He's not screaming like Bayern Munich's next left back to me. He's not screaming, Inter Milan, or he's not screaming PSG to me. I think probably is on his way down, and I don't know. I just think he'll be on realistically on loads more money than Simicast, but that's the way I look at it, that kind of view.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, mate. It's definitely interesting. Baron Cross as well. I can see Kershaw and a few of the other people in the comment section talking about his latest tweet. I don't know if this is going to take me to it. I do have an athletic membership. Can you see that? No, you can't. That's annoying. Right, hold on. I'm just going to take you to it, mate. There you go. I'm doing all of this.
Just respond quickly to some of the comments, by the way, in terms of saying Robertson and that lot.
Yeah.
I don't think for 1 minute it's realistic, because I think his wages purely are too high. But players, when they're not playing, and I think Andy Robertson to me is someone that strikes me as this type of player, just want to leave. Aaron Ramsdale, for example, just wanted to leave Arsenal. He knew he wasn't going to be able to fight for his place back. Realistically, Robertson's not going to be able to fight for his place back with Kirkez. If Liverpool spend 45 to 50 million on him, Robertson's not going to see much of that pitch next season. That's all I would say to that.
Well, let's just get through a few of these, mate. Leeds United owners will issue around 120 million worth of new shares in the club ahead of the return to the Premier League. Investors have been told the 9-figure influx will be put towards Ellen Rowe's redevelopment in the summer transfer window. According to sources about the Athletic, under the condition of anonymity, and I'd say it, Oscar. Anonymity. I know what it means. I can never say it to protect the relationship. Basically, keeping sources close. Senior figures in the ownership group reached out to shareholders in the days after promotion was secured. It was Burnley to another Sheffield United that sealed the deal for Leeds. While some of the existing investors declined the chance to spend more, the target group has been blah, 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 blah. What this means for Leeds, while this healthy influx of fresh cash into the club ahead of its most important summer years is it's unlikely this will be the entirety of what they'll have to spend. This increased income from broadcast and sponsors will fund United's plans. I'm not used to those people calling us United, along with whatever they generate from player sales. This cash will, of course, not fund the entirety of Ellen Rowe's redevelopment. It will come as a surprise to nobody that Leeds need to reinforce their squad in virtually every position. A first-rate goalkeeper and a striker who can compete with Peru. It will not supplement him. Stand out as key priorities to surviving the drop. Starters at centre back, left back, number 10, left wing would not go amiss either. That's before you come to the competition. To be fair, guys, I think that's just opinion based from Baron. I don't think that's actually what Leeds are going to be doing, but that's just more opinion. But
can I just say, I'm stunned by stuff. Do people actually not think Andy Robertson would be unbelievable to Leeds if he can make the signing happen?
I love how you just ignored all that.
I know he's wrong side of 30, but jeez.
I love how you
just think he'd be good.
I love how you just ignored all of that. That's brilliant.
No, but I just saw some of the comments there. One thing that stood out from that is, my word, we love a winger, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We cannot go a window that side. And it's music to my ears, by the way. What's being said there is music to my ears. I think I agree with the key target positions. I find it interesting they spoke about left and right winger. I find that quite interesting. The interesting thing is what Solomon would come under. Would he be the starting left winger, or would he be the backup left winger? That would be quite interesting.
Wait, wasn't he saying? Wasn't that just? I mean, let me read this again. It will come to no surprise as nobody that Leeds need to reinforce in every position. A first-rate goalkeeper, strikers who can compete with Peru, stand out as key priorities. Is that not just Barron's opinion? Starters at centre back, left back, number 10, and left wing would not go amiss either. I think that's just opinion, mate. I don't think that's actually Leeds. I know it's annoying. I think that's just Barron's opinion, which is obvious. But listen, we'll leave it there, mate. We have been going for an hour and a half. Guys, it's been a gargantuan stream. I hope you enjoyed it. Apologies for the very beginning, but you are getting this content for absolutely free. We've been live.
Last year contract, by the way, Andy Robertson. Just leave it
that
one out there. Just going to throw that one out there.
Just leave it there. But yeah, guys, make sure you are slapping a like on the video as well. Check out Oscar on Twitter as well. He's going to be putting some absolutely great stuff up there, I'm sure, when it comes to Barca and obviously Leeds United. Make sure you do that, everybody. Really appreciate it. Will we be live tomorrow? We may be, but we have spoken about a lot here when it comes to the room mill. If something comes out fresh, we'll do the room mill tomorrow. But yeah, we'll probably likely do it tomorrow. We've got a big guest coming on the second channel tomorrow as well. So make sure you check out Conor McGilligan if you do fancy a little bit of general bits and bats as well. That is going to be us until Battle Lines, I think, at some point. So I'll let you know in due course. But you have to be subscribed to the channel, everybody, or you will not be able to see the community post. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll see you in a bit. Cheers.